Imagine awakening in a remote Scottish village, cocooned by vast moorlands and ancient hills, where the wind's song is as familiar as your own heartbeat. But now, layered atop the rustle of heather and the murmur of sheep, comes the ceaseless rhythm of colossal turbines, gleaming white sentinels that dominate the skyline, their blades endlessly whirring against the horizon. This is not a distant prospect, but the lived reality for tens of thousands across Scotland's Highlands and Islands, as the green energy revolution sweeps through the land, bringing with it both remarkable promise and profound disruption. Scotland stands at the forefront of renewable energy on the world stage. The country's name is now almost synonymous with environmental ambition, innovation, and leadership in tackling climate change. The statistics are breathtaking. In the year 2022, Scotland generated more than 113% of its internal electricity demand from renewable sources. This means that, in theory, the nation produced more clean electricity than it actually used, a feat achieved through an impressive mix of wind, hydro, and solar power. By the following year, over one-third of all electricity generated in Scotland was exported, the lion's share flowing south to England. This transfer is made possible by a vast latticework of pylons and transmission lines, threading their way from the windswept coastlines of Caithness through the fertile fields of Angus to the heart of urban England. New superconnectors, like the Mammoth project linking Peterhead in Aberdeenshire to Yorkshire, are being constructed to carry even more green power across the border, further cementing Scotland's status as a net exporter of renewable energy. At first glance, Scotland's green energy journey appears to be a resounding success, a model for other nations to emulate. Its windswept highlands and rugged islands are not only lighting homes from Inverness to London, but also helping the United Kingdom inch closer to its audacious climate targets. Projects such as the Viking wind farm in Shetland, approved in the year 2024, are poised to power nearly 500,000 homes on their own. The Scottish government's strategy is clear: reach net zero emissions by the middle of this century, with renewables forming the beating heart of the transition. Yet beneath these headline-grabbing achievements lies a far more complicated and emotionally charged reality. The cost of this transformation is being paid most dearly by those living closest to the infrastructure. From the mossy peat bogs of the north to the sheltered glens of the west, rural communities are being reshaped by towering pylons, sprawling substations, and endless convoys of heavy lorries. Centuries-old farmland is being carved up for the national grid, and the landscape, once defined by nature and tradition, is now dominated by industrial steel and spinning blades. The sense of being overwhelmed is palpable. Councillor Helen Crawford, a leading voice in Highland communities, does not mince words. Local democracy has been shot to pieces. People are being totally ignored. This sentiment has found echoes across the political spectrum, uniting people regardless of party or background. In the early days of wind farm development, there was real excitement. Communities saw these projects as a way to break free from fossil fuels, to fight climate change, and perhaps to breathe new economic life into remote areas. But as turbines multiplied and pylons began to march across ever more hills and valleys, a subtle shift occurred. Some glens now host as many as 8 wind farms, and each is considered separately in planning, ignoring their combined impact. For some residents, the view from their doorstep has changed from uninterrupted moorland to a forest of spinning blades. The loss is not just aesthetic, it is existential, touching on people's sense of place and control over their own futures. This mounting tension has ignited a fierce debate over fairness, justice, and the very nature of progress. Who ultimately reaps the rewards of Scotland's green energy boom? While energy companies and distant urban centres enjoy lower emissions and new revenue streams, many rural Scots feel left behind. The planning system itself has come under heavy criticism. Large-scale projects, especially those exceeding 50 megawatts, often bypass local councils entirely, going straight to the Scottish Government's Energy Consents Unit. Local authorities, bound by the priorities of the National Planning Framework 4, can object, but the process is so labyrinthine and resource-intensive that genuine community influence is rare. This sense of exclusion has boiled over. In Booley, a historic town at the heart of the Highlands, more than 50 community councils, representing a staggering 72,000 people, nearly one-third of the Highlands population, have united to demand a pause on new developments. Their call is for a coherent, nationwide energy strategy, one that places meaningful local consultation and a cumulative assessment of impacts at its core. They have rallied behind a simple but powerful message: No more Highland Wild West. James Duncan of Strathdown Community Council paints a vivid and sobering picture. Right now, there are 13 wind farms surrounding our community, with another 6 in the pipeline. When all are complete, our little glen, 22 miles long and 6 miles wide, will generate enough power to supply 70% of all Scottish homes. Yet paradoxically, we pay more for our electricity than anyone else in Europe. His words distill the heart of the dilemma. Those communities that generate the lion's share of Scotland's green energy are also those most disrupted by its infrastructure and, cruelly, often receive the least tangible benefit. The impact is not just financial or environmental. It is deeply personal and, at times, heart-wrenching. At a recent community gathering, one woman broke down in tears, overcome by the sense that her home and voice had been sacrificed on the altar of progress. Her story is not unique. Across the Highlands and Islands, from the coastal towns of Caithness to the scattered crofts of Sutherland, residents confront a daily reality that is often at odds with the grand narrative of green transition. The scale of the disruption is staggering. Consider the proposed Fenelon substation, a colossal project slated for a quiet hamlet near Kiltarledy. If given the green light, this substation will occupy more than 66 acres of an 800-acre farmland site, enough space to accommodate 600 football pitches. To facilitate construction, temporary housing and storage facilities will be erected, and local roads will endure a relentless stream of lorries, one every minute, for as long as 5 years. Some residents have already been uprooted, forced to leave before planning permission was even granted. To many, it feels like their fate has been decided without them, their voices drowned out by the rush to build. The consequences extend far beyond inconvenience. Environmental organizations warn that the proliferation of wind farms and pylons is fragmenting critical habitats, threatening peatlands, forests, and productive farmland. Peatlands, in particular, are vital carbon sinks. Destroying them can actually undermine the very climate goals these projects are meant to achieve. The proposed Achlacan wind farm in Caithness has drawn especially fierce opposition, with campaigners raising alarms over peatland destruction and the visual blight on one of Scotland's most scenic regions. Tourism, too, is at risk. A University of the Highlands and Islands study suggests that large-scale wind farms and transmission lines can erode the appeal of Scotland's iconic landscapes, leading to a decline in visitor numbers and lost revenue for local businesses. For many rural communities, tourism is a lifeblood. Its loss would be keenly felt. But the central question remains: can Scotland's drive for renewable energy coexist with the rights, dignity, and well-being of its rural citizens? Or are these areas doomed to become sacrifice zones, utility corridors serving distant cities, while local people shoulder the burdens? The technical and economic challenges are formidable. The grid infrastructure, designed for a bygone era, has not kept pace with the explosion in wind and solar generation. As Karen Turner of the Fraser of Allender Institute observes, constraint payments, money paid to wind farms for unused energy, are a glaring sign of grid congestion. In recent years, these payments have ballooned, reaching hundreds of millions of pounds annually. This means that while turbines spin ceaselessly in the Highlands, much of their energy never reaches consumers, wasted due to bottlenecks. For local communities, the result is a bitter irony. Their landscapes are transformed for national benefit, yet they see little in return but higher energy bills and a skyline dominated by steel towers. This growing sense of injustice has galvanized a powerful grassroots movement. The Bowley Gathering, described as the largest meeting of its kind since the Crofting Acts of the 19th century, was a watershed moment. 53 community councils called not only for a halt to major projects, but for a national inquiry to assess the cumulative impact of energy developments. Their demands are echoed by local leaders such as Stuart Mills of Halkirk and District Community Council, who warns that Caithness is under siege from energy schemes, and Mark Gibson of Dunnet and Canis Bay Community Council, who laments the absence of a coherent national strategy and the meager benefits accruing locally. The stakes could not be higher. If community frustration continues to mount, opposition may harden into outright resistance, leading to legal battles, lengthy project delays, and potentially derailing Scotland's ambitious climate targets. As Professor Jim Skee of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change cautions, a just transition is not only about cutting carbon, it must also safeguard communities and landscapes. Without careful planning and genuine engagement, the energy transition risks becoming a source of division rather than unity. Yet, amid these tensions, there are glimmers of hope and clear opportunities for a better way forward. The Scottish Government's most recent energy strategy, released in draft in the year 2024, places the concept of a just transition at its very core. But how can this be achieved in practice? Experts like Dr. Keith Baker of Glasgow Caledonian University argue that a community-led approach is not just preferable, it is essential. Imagine a future where local people actually own shares in renewable projects, where profits from wind farms are reinvested in schools, health clinics, broadband, and youth programs. Community Energy Scotland is already helping to turn this vision into reality, supporting villages and towns to develop their own green projects and retain the financial benefits. There are inspiring real-world examples. In the Western Isles, community-owned wind farms generate millions of pounds each year for local development. These funds have supported everything from childcare and elder care programs to job training, infrastructure improvements, and the preservation of Gaelic culture and heritage. This approach is being studied by the Scottish Land Commission, which is currently reviewing how land is allocated for renewables, with the aim of ensuring that community benefits are baked into every project from the start. If such models were adopted more widely, the transition to renewables could become a source of pride and prosperity for rural Scotland, rather than a burden. There is also a chance to reimagine rural economies, not just as sites for extraction, but as hubs of innovation, ownership, and opportunity. But infrastructure investment is crucial. Experts like Karen Turner and Alistair Phillips-Davies of SSE emphasize that without major upgrades to transmission lines, battery storage, and smart grid technology, Scotland's green energy ambitions will remain bottlenecked. Grid modernization could reduce constraint payments by as much as one-third, freeing up hundreds of millions of pounds for community benefit and reinvestment in local areas. Fabrice Levesque of Aurora Energy Research envisions Scotland as a global leader in green hydrogen, exporting clean energy to Europe and beyond, and creating thousands of new green jobs in the process. For these opportunities to be realized, however, political will and public engagement are paramount. The grassroots movement in Beaulieu is a testament to the power of collective action. More than 50 community councils representing over 72,000 people have come together to demand transparency, strategic planning, and a seat at the table. Their message is clear and urgent. The energy future of Scotland must be shaped with, not just for, the people who live with its consequences every day. So what lessons does Scotland's experience hold for the rest of the world? It is both a cautionary tale and a beacon of what is possible. Even the most ambitious green agendas can stumble if local voices are ignored. As countries everywhere race toward net zero emissions, they will confront similar questions. Who decides where infrastructure is built? Who shares in the benefits? Who bears the costs, visible and invisible? There are practical takeaways here for policymakers, investors, and everyday citizens alike. Building a sustainable future is about more than technology and targets. It is about fairness, transparency, and inclusion. If you live near proposed energy projects, demand honest consultation and robust benefit sharing schemes. If you are a decision maker, remember that genuine local support is not a box to be ticked, but the foundation for enduring progress. It is also essential to recognize an uncomfortable truth. Despite exporting more than one-third of its green energy, Scotland's residents are still saddled with some of the highest electricity bills in Europe. The system that was meant to deliver energy justice has, so far, fallen short of its promise. Yet, with increasing public scrutiny, mounting political pressure, and the rise of community-led initiatives, there is real hope for meaningful change. Looking forward, several scenarios are possible. If grid upgrades and investment in energy storage accelerate, constraint payments could drop by as much as 30%, releasing hundreds of millions of pounds for local projects and public services. Enhanced community involvement and ownership could increase public support for new developments by up to 15%, smoothing the path for future growth. Conversely, if environmental concerns trigger stricter planning rules, the pace of wind power expansion could slow by 20% or more, necessitating a rethink of national targets and strategies. There are also broader implications for energy justice and social cohesion. If Scotland can successfully integrate community ownership, environmental stewardship, and grid modernization, it could become a global model for a just, community-driven transition. If not, it risks becoming a case study in the dangers of top-down imposition and rural alienation. The choices made in the coming years will echo far beyond Scotland's borders. Will the country become a shining example of how to balance climate ambition with social justice? Or will it serve as a warning of what happens when local voices are drowned out in the rush to build a greener future? Ultimately, the energy transition is inevitable, but the shape it takes, whether it is imposed from above or built from the ground up, will determine who benefits and who is left behind. If you believe that energy should serve both people and planet, then Scotland's struggle is your story too. So, share this video, add your voice in the comments, and help keep this vital debate alive. The future of green energy is not just about turbines and transmission lines, it is about fairness, about community, and about the kind of world we want to create together. The winds of change are blowing stronger than ever,